Hi, this is Chris. This is Live, Laugh, Wah, and we're going to do a unit review with Nobz. Thanks for listening. We're going to start with the knob datasheet and the variable loadouts that you can get. We're going to look at some of the upgrades such as Truck Boys or Mad Boys, and we're going to talk about what I think are the best loadouts and what factions could benefit from those loadouts. And then we're just going to do a quick recap after all of that and go over what my overall conclusions are. When we look at the data sheet, it's actually not bad. It's movement 5, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 5, strength 5, T5, 2 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 7. The most important thing here is that they have a save characteristic and their 2 wounds. The save of 4 plus is really handy. Unfortunately, the strat where you could give them +1 to save if they killed the vehicle or the vehicle they were in died is gone, so you can't get them to a 3+ anymore. And that is kind of sad, but just having an armor save in this codex is still pretty good. There's 17 points base with a slugga and a choppa, and you can replace either arm or both arms with any melee weapon. Big choppa is 2 points, right? No. Sorry, big choppa is +2 strength, -1 rend, 2 damage, and it's 3 points. And that takes you to 20 points total. Power claws are effectively like thunder hammers. They're ×2, -3, 2 damage, but they're 8 points each. Kill saws are ×2, -4, D3, and then they're 10 points each. And obviously, having 2 of these weapons doesn't benefit you except for the kill saw. If you have 2 kill saws, you get 1 bonus attack, and if you have 2 choppas, then you get 2 bonus attacks because each choppa gives you a bonus attack, but the kill saw only gives you a bonus attack if you have 2 of them. And then the power stabba, which is an interesting pick. It's strength user -2, damage 1, 5 points, 22 points for the model. That's an odd one because I think there's only one power stabba in the knob box. So I'm kind of surprised that that didn't get restricted to one. Really, most of the orc stuff didn't get restricted like that anyway. But a lot of the Ork Codex just feels like it was copy pasted from 8th to 9th, and that could be why. You can also replace both weapons with a combi rocket, which is D3 shots at strength 8, -2, 3 damage, and you get to shoot a profile, which is DACA 3-2, strength 4, no rend, 1 damage, and that's 10 points, or a combi scorcher, which is just a heavy flamer and a shooter, and that's also 10 points. I would advise against the shooting profiles for the most part. They're generally not very good. Or there's just units that have the same gun or an analogous gun that's cheaper. For example, you could put rockets on your knobs, but tank busters are cheaper, and we'll get into that in a minute. Let's take a look at the specialist lads. This is the upgrades, and we're going to talk about whether or not they're worth the sacrificing of a clan culture. When you take a specialist lad or a specialist mob, you lose access to your clan culture, which means you don't get to benefit from the strat anymore. So, like if you're Goffs, you can't get exploding fives because you don't actually have the Goffs keyword anymore. Death Skulls, you lose access to the +1 to wound against vehicles. And I bring those two up specifically because I feel like those are the two that benefit the most from retaining their culture because their strat is so good, and really what they get from the culture is really good. Because Goffs will get +1 strength on the charge, exploding sixes in melee. We're going to kind of get into that real quick. When they're +1 strength on the charge and you declare your Wagh, Goff big choppas go to strength 9. Because their strength +2 is 7, +1 on the charge is 8, +1 for the Wagh. So you're wounding land raiders, and I know this is a bad example because the -1 rend is just going to get ignored because of armor of contempt, but you're wounding land raiders on a 4 if they're chaos, a 3 if they're imperium. And that means a lot. You know, strength 9 is a big step in this game. And they're 2 damage, so you can chip a lot of damage off of things with them. Death Skulls, however, they lose OBSEC, which is also really good. One of my favorite gimmicks is to put a unit of Nobz in the back of a Battle Wagon or Bone Breaker, bring it out of the teleporter, try to ramming speed it onto an objective, and just let somebody kill the Bone Breaker, and then the Nobz get out. They have OBSEC. They can usually just take that objective from whatever's around them. They also get a 5+ against mortals, which is really handy in the mortal heavy game that we have kind of transitioned into from early 9th to late 9th. And then the Death Skull strat is also really good. Like I said, it's +1 to wound against vehicles. So again, those are the two cultures where I feel like they're worth keeping their culture bonus. There's freebooters. I feel I could go either way, but we'll kind of get into that. I think the cultures that gain the most from the specialist mobs, like Truck Boys or Mad Boys, Evil Sons. First of all, they only have access to one assault weapon, and it's a flamer, so they don't have to roll hit rolls anyway. So you just get to advance and shoot with them. So that part of the culture bonus is not beneficial at all. The extra movement is okay, but I don't think it's necessarily worth. I think the trade-off is worth it when you look at what you gain compared to what you lose. And their strat isn't super good for them. They get to shoot, move, shoot, move. And yeah, I mean, it's just better on things like Coptas that can cover 32 inches as opposed to Nobz. They get to cover 12. You know, Bad Moons, again, uh, if you're taking Nobz and you're making them shooty, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice. The rockets are only going to hit on sixes because they're heavy weapons now instead of assault weapons. And so it just doesn't feel really good. Like, cool, you got 30-inch range rockets, but you're only hitting on sixes for most of the game. So again, I just feel like they're not really worth it. Snake bites. I mean, their culture bonus. I mean, let's be honest, it just kind of sucks. It doesn't really do much for the army. You get transhuman against what is it, strength 7 and weaker, but when your whole army is T6 or T5 or higher, you're literally only affecting strength 6 and strength 7 attacks and then poison weapons. So it's just like whatever. It's not worth running snake bites unless you're just doing it for the fluff or the lore, or you're doing like a squig heavy and you're taking advantage of that. So I feel like Evil Sons, Bad Moon, snake bites, and Blood Axes. I forgot to put them on here. Blood Axes I feel like could go either way. They're again like the fallback and charge is handy, but I do talk about that later. I just forgot to put them on this slide. Like I said, freebooters could go either way. Nobz already have access to hitting on twos pretty easily in the Codex, but you could actually get like Power Claw or Kill Saw Nobz hitting on twos. But we'll kind of talk about why that's not super relevant in a couple seconds here. Again, your best specialist lads to consider are Truck Boys. They can disembark and move, advance, and charge after the transport moves. Obviously, you can only advance and charge if you've declared your Wagh, but they get to move the 12 inches for the truck, get out of the truck, move their movement, and still charge and still shoot, or advance and charge if you've declared your Wagh. So truck boys are really good. I got a buddy who uses truck boys a lot. It's typically orc boys and not Nobz. But basically, it's to just create like move blockers. You just run them at people, charge into soft targets, and just kind of jam them in their deployment zone and do things like that. And it works really well for him. That's not the way I play, but he does really well with it. I just prefer to kind of use my boys and my Nobz a little bit differently. Sneaky gets could be okay. You get +1 to your, what is it? I think it's +1 to your AP. You get bonus AP while the target of your melee attack is receiving the benefits of cover. And that basically just means if you're making a melee attack and they're in a, if you're making a melee attack and they're in a terrain feature, you just get an additional AP. So that one could be really good again if you have like big choppas, because your big choppas now go to -2, which means you're finally punching through Armor of Contempt. If you've got Power Stabbers, for example, they could go to -3. So again, that one's pretty solid. Your regular choppas even go to -2, and you're still wounding things like Marines on 3s with regular choppas because you're Strength 5 or Strength 6, depending. So again, like Sneaky Gets could be okay. I do think Truck Boys has more utility because if you need to, you can move them across the board to maybe do a secondary objective if you can't charge anything. And it just gives them a lot more threat range. So I think it's generally a better way to play them. But Sneaky Gets does have play. You could take Pyromaniacs if you want to. I again don't take the Scorches, is kind of my opinion on it. Burna Boys are cheaper. Yes, they're only strength 4 instead of strength 5, but with so many people playing Armor of Contempt armies because it's like 50 or 60% of the players play Marines or some flavor of Imperium, Scorchers are effectively worthless. And I feel like Pyromaniacs, if you're going to use it, that upgrade goes on Burna Boys. And even then, I don't know that it's worth it. It just gives you a minimum of 3 shots. And then Mad Boys is pretty weird. You roll a D3, and basically you get to kind of see what it does. So at the start of the battle round, you roll a D3, you pile in 6 inches on a 1. On a 2, you reroll 1 hit or wound, and on a 3, you get +1 strength. Again, it's interesting. There's ways that you could play that, and it could get funny because, again, on the wall, you're adding 2 to your strength, so you can have strength 7 choppas. So it's not bad, but I don't personally like the random aspect of it. But again, like I said, they're just okay. To me, I think the best loadouts for your Nobz are going to be, and we'll talk about Goths and Death Skulls first. I don't think you do any specialist mob upgrades with Goths or Death Skulls. I mean, you could, but I feel like you're just losing too much. If I were running Goths, I'd either run a Power Stabba or a Big Choppa with a Choppa. I might run Dub Choppas. It really is dependent on what it is I want to get from them. Personally, I'm probably running Big Choppas. They still feel kind of bad into anything with Armor of Contempt, but they are 2 damage, and it's a lot of dice. So on the Wagh, your big chop is going to be Strength 9 in Goths. On the charge and on the Wagh, it's going to be Strength 9, Neg 1, 2 damage, and you get 4 attacks base, and then you'll get a bonus Choppa attack. Because I don't see a reason to take the pistols. I think you just take a Choppa and a big Choppa, and you just roll buckets of dice at things until they evaporate. That's kind of my opinion on it. And what's really funny is if you bring a weird boy, right, you can use Warpath to give them an additional attack. So if you've got a 10-man brick of Nobz, you can throw 50 dice at something that's strength 9, neg 1, 2 damage, and then still get your bonus attack. So that 10-man unit is running 60 dice with those 2 buffs, the Wagh and the Warpath. So that's why, to me, the big choppers are the better loadout. The higher strength and the 2 damage. Yeah, there's a lot of damage reduction in the game, but there's also a lot of things that get played that don't have it. Most Sisters vehicles don't have it outside the Paragon Warsuits and Morven Vol, and a lot of Marine vehicles don't have it outside of Dreadnoughts. So again, like there's play there, and Marines in general just don't have it. So you're just killing Marines. You've got 60, 50 dice here. 50 dice here, you could get hitting on 3s, easy access to hitting on 2s. You get 6s explode. You can get 5s explode with the strat. And then they're going to just wound Marines on 2s unless they use transhuman on them. So you're going to clear out whatever you touch with these just through weight of dice. Like I said, the Power Stabba is Strength 7, Neg 2, 4 damage or 4 attacks base, but it is 2 points more than the Big Choppa, and this is where their war gear gets weird because the Choppa is user bonus attack Neg 1, the Big Choppa is +2 Neg 1 2 damage, and then the Power Stabba is Strength user Neg 2 1 damage, and they all have different price points attached to them rather than like the way Marines work, where it's like, well, this is just a variant on the chain axe or the chain sword, and they're all just the same kind of points cost. Or you can keep them really cheap and go 17 points, get dub choppas for 2 bonus attacks. And on the Wagh, that's 6 attacks per knob. So again, if you have Warpath, that's 70 dice. Boom. 70 dice that are going to be strength 7, neg 1, 1 damage. So again, you're going to kill whatever it is you touch just through weight of dice unless like you roll really bad or your opponent rolls really well. Like they're going to chip away enough damage and wounds just through weight of dice because you're wounding dreadnoughts on 4s. Um, so it's one of those where at worst you're going to cripple them, but when you account for like 6s explode, potential to do 5s explode, potential to hitting on 2s, there's a lot of damage output just through that loadout alone. Death Skulls, again, they're not going to necessarily have the damage output that the Goths do, but the fact that they have OBSEC and the Feel No Pain Against Mortals it makes them pretty good. And big choppers are still strength 8, so you're still wounding like base marines on 2s, and you're still wounding dreadnoughts on 3, so that doesn't change. You do lose the 6s explode, but again, the OBSEC is really good. I've played Death Skull since I got back into Orcs. That's just been the culture I've played. And a lot of it has to do with all my infantry being OBSEC. So I enjoy playing Nobz. I enjoy playing Mega Nobz. And this just gives them a utility that they just don't have in other cultures. So it's pretty cool. And again, I think your loadouts are going to be the same. You either do dub choppas or big choppas. I don't think anything else is worth it. Once you start slapping power claws and kill saws on them, like I said, you're verging into Mega Knob territory in terms of points, and you might as well just spend the 5 extra points to get the Mega Knob with the power claw, because now you've got a better save and an extra wound. Once we get into snake bites and suns, like I said, uh, just make them truck boys. There's no reason. You don't get anything from running those cultures with your Nobz. Again, you could give the Truck Boys rockets. They're 27 points a model. Tank Busters are 16, but Truck Boys will get a permanent +1 to hit rolls while they're embarked in the truck. And that's just because of a weird interaction with an FAQ. But that means your rockets are always going to hit on 5s, maybe 4s if you don't move. But Tank Busters are 11 points cheaper and effectively are the same thing. They just don't have as many wounds. So again, I personally would probably keep Truck Boys kind of melee centric. I wouldn't waste the points on Scorches when you have access to just Burna Boys who do the same thing. Free Buddhas, like I said, they could be pretty interesting. You might consider giving them Power Claws and look at it as instead of like I'm spending 5 extra points for an extra wound and stuff, uh, I'm saving 5 points with the potential to hit on 2s with a Power Claw. You know, so it's one of those where my personal preference is to just run Mega Nobz at that point because it's only a 5 point difference. But a good argument could be made to me for Freebooters Nobz interacting in this way. Blood Axes, again, I mean, we're still looking at the same loadouts once we get into Blood Axes. If you don't make them Truck Boys, Fallback and Charge is okay. But the problem you run into, like I said earlier, is that when they charge something, it's probably going to evaporate. And if it doesn't, there's a good chance your Nobz are going to get killed in the counter swing or the counter charge. Just because they're not that resilient. Like they're one of the tankier units, infantry units in the Codex, but they don't stay on the table that long. So it's kind of weird. The new Wagh rules do help them out. Having that 5-up invulnerable save does help keep them on the table a bit longer. So it might be worth kind of messing around with. I haven't played with Blood Axes at all this edition, so I don't have an opinion on them. And then Bad Moons, you just run Truck Boys. Like Orc shooting is really bad right now, and I mean it always kind of has been in its own way. But like the DACA weapons are kind of not good. Uh, Rockets going to heavy weapons really hurt them a lot and make them not super viable on infantry based stuff. So like if you're running Bad Moons, you're probably just running a lot of buggies, so you don't have any of the heavy weapons movement shooting modifiers. At that point, like cool, just either make them melee and make them Truck Boys, or just don't even mess with them. Uh, and again, I just want to touch on Mad Boys again. It could be a good alternative for the bad cultures that don't interact well with Nobz. You know, if you don't want to do Truck Boys, if you're like me and you just don't run Truck Boys, this might be a way to run them. But for me, it's like if I'm not going to run the Truck Boys, I'm just not going to run the Nobz because there's not really a point to it. What are they going to give me that I can't get from something else? So I just want to kind of wrap this up. And again, I think Nobz are a little overpointed right now. I don't think their base points is necessarily terrible. Like 17 points isn't horrible, but it's mostly the war gear. You know, I think big choppas and double choppas seem to be the best loadouts for their points, but I also think power stabas, big choppas, and choppas all just need to be the same points. Like they all need to be just like an interchangeable free upgrade. And it's weird that they're not, or even just make power stabas and big choppas like a 1 point upgrade and regular choppas free. I could see that. But something to make them a little bit cheaper. They should not be more expensive than an assault intercessor when you consider the fact that the intercessor has a better save, a better leadership, better strat support, better character support, Like they should not necessarily be the same price. And that's just kind of my opinion on it. Obviously, Games Workshop doesn't feel that way. Like I said, I think Death Skulls and Goff seem to be kind of the best culture for keeping them usable without making them truck boys. You know, OBSEC for Death Skulls and the +1 strength Exploding Sixes for Goffs, both really good. And I think your option is you just run truck boys for the other cultures. You know, again, I could see a good argument made for freebooters just because of the relatively easy access they could have to hitting on twos with their power claws. But I just find it hard to justify that over Mega Nobz when Mega Nobz are just 5 points more at that point. And if you wanted to, you could even run Power Claws and Rockets, and then they're 10 points more. And while the Rockets aren't necessarily great because they're heavy, in freebooters they become a lot better because you can kill units and get them to ignore that moving and shooting penalty. So freebooters, I might do a video on freebooters here pretty soon. They've got a lot of interesting interactions. That was my list early on, and really I think the only reason it's not super viable now is just because Armor of Contempt really like just hurts rockets in a big way. But we'll see. I'll kind of that might be the next video. I'm going to do a series of Ork videos and a series of Dark Elder videos coming up. And that's kind of where we're going to be focused on for a bit. Once again, thanks for listening. Patreon tiers, Hatchling $1.50, get mentions on the Patreon page. Firebird $5, early access to all content and ability to vote on future content. Phoenix $10, you get all of that and a sticker. And then Immortal $20, you get all that, the sticker and the t-shirt. So, and you also get a special shout out at the end of the video. And speaking of, our special shout out, Captain Too Tall and the real Donnie G. They've been with me since day one. I appreciate you guys. You know, again, that money is just gone towards building up the terrain collection so that I can continue to run events. Once again, all the links in the description. Check us out on Twitch. We stream games every Thursday. And then I'm on Twitter and obviously Patreon. And then we've got the Facebook page and a Teespring store with some pretty cool themed merch. You guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.